Uh, oh, by the way, Derek.
All right, we should be live, guys. All right. Good morning to everyone. That's yeah. And hopefully everybody in the YouTube chat can hear me.
By the way, Derek,
you guys say good morning to make sure that the YouTube chat can hear you.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
All right.
Good morning
to everyone.
May the dark side be with you.
All right. YouTube chat, can you hear me and can you hear the guests? Because me and them are on two different audio streams, so
yeah, we're on.
Usually have problems with this. But I bet it's working this morning. Because I'm on my second cup of coffee. I'm pretty sure I got it today.
Second cup of coffee.
Hearing and seeing. All right. Appreciate that.
All right.
So what has everybody been up to in the world of Linux, free and open source software? Ben, I know you... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm still having some challenges with that awesome config I talked to you about, Derek, on Gentoo.
On Gentoo?
Yeah, it's Meshy's config, because the problem with it is, again, is that he has a high DPI screen, like a 2800 by 1880, I think it is, and he does have a 1920 by 1080 script, but the problem is he has like a bunch of X-render commands that change the resolution, and
they're probably only going to work for his monitors because you'd have to make sure you had his displays too.
Yeah,
for those X-render.
So when you get a chance, we might have to sit down in like a private Jitsi chat or something and take a look at that.
We can get together on that one day.
Conky has some really weird dimensions and stuff. It's just like, so when you get some time, I would need some help with that because it's just like really proportionate to his laptop, and it's just like, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is this somebody? Like really is this config?
It's like a pain in the ass. So yeah.
Is this config something that he keeps up to date, or is this something?
No, this is a awesome 4 config, but he has a different one now that's Arch specific. So yeah, this is an old Gentoo one when like Awesome 4 first came out. So.
You might want to get the latest one because Awesome sees updates, and sometimes their updates do break.
That one doesn't have a massive. It has like a funky sidebar widget that is just. Oh. So yeah, I'll try this latest one.
Yeah.
Anyway, another thing that I'm doing is, testing out. I'm going to be making a Debian/MX hybrid ISO that is gonna, use some of the MX tools in it and stuff like that. So. Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking to Run with a Dolphin about, and
wow.
He said if I do that, install the Debian multimedia repo, but then instantly remove it after you put the MX repos in there because they might conflict and all that.
Yeah, because they're probably not technically MX is based on Debian stable, but they probably have some more up-to-date packages.
Yeah, they do. So that's why I'm going to take out the Debian multimedia repositories after I install the package and put the Debian and MX stuff together, because he said if I do that, then things can go.
And I've played around with stuff like that in the past, and I know a lot of Debian users that get tired of old software. Sometimes they need a new package. They'll quickly add a repo like the testing repo, and
unless you install a backports kernel like kernel 6 or 5. Higher than 5.10, which sadly Debian stable still ships with. My trackpad will not work, and I have to use a mouse. And the Wi-Fi driver is buggy as heck with the Intel Wi-Fi that's in this laptop. It's an AX series card. And unfortunately, the AX series cards are still, the firmware is still just not 100% there unless you use a very newer version of the Linux firmware. So it's not great. And also, it has a hybrid NVIDIA plus AMD graphics configuration.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem pretty much on everything.
Yeah, so a lot of gaming laptops are very picky about that. So,
Well, I am glad that you have finally given up the unstable Gentoo and are moving to Debian stable.
I'm going to Debian because, things like LFS and Gentoo are not very, I've learned, are not very good for daily OSs.
All right. What's everybody else been up to? Big Pod, you got any stories for us?
No, I've been streaming, or at least had one stream, and I plan to have more in the future.
Yeah, you're streaming today, aren't you?
Yeah.
Is it today? Yeah.
Yeah, he will be.
I'll probably have to watch that one after the fact because I'm not going to be at a computer while you're streaming today, but I will definitely check it on a replay. What are you talking about today? Containers?
Containerization. We're talking about how containers actually work behind the scenes, how the namespace technology that they use, and I'm gonna be using Kubernetes pods as an example of how namespaces work.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Andreas, did you? I know you were having audio issues. Is everything working now?
No problem.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw something in the chat. I don't know how long ago that was, but you mentioned something about a sound issue. I didn't know if that was you or me.
No, that was me.
It's Linux, so it could have been either one of us. Yeah.
Speaking of which, I've been dealing with audio issues until 3 a.m. this morning because of pipewire. Not actually pipewire. It was Audacity. Whenever I launched Audacity, I've been dealing with it turned into chipmunk audio. I close it, reboot the computer, everything is back to normal. So I took it off, downloaded another audio editing application called Ocean Audio, OCEN. It works just fine. Why is Audacity overtaking my my pipewire pulse and turning it into chipmunk condensed audio? I do not understand. I battled it until 3 a.m. in the morning, and I even enabled something I didn't know existed for pipewire called echo cancel module. Enabled it, but it doesn't cancel enough. This microphone is so crap that the headset keeps bleeding into it no matter what I do, unless I use it in OBS. In OBS, there's echo cancellation, and you can do a lot of shenanigans in OBS. But if you're capturing the desktop audio without OBS directly into the piping it directly into the audio editing application, there's no filter in between, so it keeps capturing the headset audio.
Yeah. So, I can't help you with that. I use Audacity, but I never use Audacity to record. I just use it to edit audio after the fact.
Yeah. Well, to record audio, it just takes over. It takes over the whole pipewire audio stack. Pipewire Pulse, whatever I change it to as an input, it just refuses to work. It just takes it over, and like if I'm talking to you right now and I launch Audacity at the same time, you're no longer going to hear me. You're going to hear staticky chipmunk audio, and Audacity will not work. So it completely kills the audio system on my computer. So I got rid of it, and I'm using Ocean Audio, and I'm happy with it. So yeah, talk about audio issues on Linux.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about that all day.
Yeah,
we could make that an entire show.
Has audio issues. Every podcast, out of sync, in sync, bad audio bleed, everything. All the kinds of audio
To be
issues,
fair,
it's Linux.
To be fair, I have mentioned this before. Most of your big Linux podcasts, most of those guys are actually doing production on Macs or Windows. Like even though they're talking about Linux, they're actually using that. Yeah.
It's always
better, more professional software for one, and for second, their audio stacks actually work correctly.
You will see some that use Linux these days for production, but I know like 10 years ago, you didn't see any like big Linux podcast, anything you listen to as far as a Linux podcast, everyone use Windows or Mac to produce their Linux podcast. It was real strange.
Well,
and they tell you up front, we got to use a Mac to make this because Linux just doesn't work. For this kind of stuff.
Well, it also depends if they're hiring that out too.
They're not doing it themselves.
I'm reaching a point where a certain point, boiling point with podcasts, like I'm thinking, screw it. If I want a podcast or I'm going to do a podcast episode with someone, I'm going to do it from Windows. Screw it.
There is a reason I edit in Windows.
Huh?
There is a reason I edit in Windows. All my videos.
You know about all your audio and video you edit in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Software works better and is better.
Yeah, with every update, they fix one thing, they break another 10. I'm like,
well, that's your problem. You gotta knowledge. So,
well, that's not always necessarily the underlying distribution. Sometimes it's just the applications themselves, because Kdenlive has the tendency to just break itself every update.
Has too many updates, you're gonna have more chance for breakages. That
is
and automatic updates.
Extent. This is true to a certain extent. Like DT said, it's also the application's fault. There's a lot of people. There's a majority of streamers I know that use OBS. They choose to stick to OBS 27.2.4. Why? Because 28 and 29 have introduced so many bugs that it.
Or even if they haven't, just pin the package. If your current version of OBS and Kdenlive and GIMP and everything like that is working, just pin the package so it never updates.
Yeah. OBS 28 went from Qt one version to Qt another version. That's why so many problems arise.
Not only that, they dropped support for a lot of plugins like StreamFX, like
that came from that. No other reason, actually.
One other thing, I often mention for these applications that you don't want updating. I typically will use app image for that, but you got to be careful, because increasingly more and more people are having app images automatically update, which I know most people want.
Yeah.
But typically, when I'm using an app image, I don't want that. For example, Jitsi, I'm using the desktop client as an app image. It did an automatic update when I opened it. So just be careful. Sometimes your app images, you think they're not updating, but they update behind the scenes. You don't see it happening. The only reason I knew it happened with Jitsi is because I got a desktop notification saying you're on the latest Jitsi.
Oh, okay. Oops. This is with the app image launcher integration thing?
Well, the app images themselves, if the authors of these app images want the app image to be automatically updated, there's a line that they can add to the app image somewhere in a config file, and it will always, anytime there's a new update, it'll update to that latest app image.
Yep.
Kind of like Flatpaks and Snaps do. They do the automatic updates, app images. Used to not, there weren't that many of them that did it. Now you're seeing a lot more of them do the automatic update. So.
I only use one app image and don't use any Snap or Flat. CurseForge update for add-ons for World of Warcraft. That's it. It works.
Huh.
I use all Snaps, Flatpaks. Mostly Flatpaks these days.
Yeah. Well, Flatpaks, with Audacity, it didn't see even though I gave it all the permissions and everything for Audacity, it didn't see parts of my audio stack. When I used the native one, it saw more. So Flatpaks, you have to be careful what you choose as Flatpaks.
Sure.
I think more than that, whatever packaging format you pick, Snap, Flatpak, app image, see what the developer is actually packaging himself. If he's doing one of them, pick that format, because the ones that just somebody in the community packages, especially for the complex stuff, don't be surprised if some of that stuff, like Kdenlive, they actually package the app image. That's why I grabbed the Kdenlive app image. Right.
Yeah, they don't do the Flatpak. It's somebody else.
Right. OBS, they package as a Flatpak. I'll go grab the Flatpak. Always see what the main dev is actually pushing as the format to go get.
It's safer that way because you can ask the developer for support.
Yeah.
Yeah. Currently I use mostly Flatpaks because I'm still on Fedora Silverblue. That
Okay.
thing is amazing. And
Speaking of which, that's a good transition to all these immutable, immutable.
We're going to talk about Vanilla OS, which I talked about a little bit this past month, and this new one that I didn't know about until this morning. Somebody mentioned it to me a couple hours before the stream today. I was getting messages about Blend OS, which is kind of a Vanilla OS kind of.
A lot of new distros like that are popping up because they're all using forks of the Crystal OS system. Because
and which I'd never heard of that.
First one.
Right, I've never heard of that. Bedrock Linux, I know, is another one I've never wanted to use because it was kind of dangerous years ago when it first popped up, because it was one of those you could install packages from several different distros like Debian and Arch and Fedora, but I do know people were breaking their machines on that distribution
because it was really weird how it was doing it. So.
Yeah, because a lot of people mentioned that they put it on their like physical equipment and then it just completely hosed their machine. And I was like, well, I'm not going to put that on camera because if I don't want to do something on camera and have people try it and then complain to me that
right. How they were doing it was like, whoa, that is problematic.
Yeah.
Well, I think the warnings are speak for themselves, but not everybody reads those. It says don't use this on a production machine.
I don't read warnings. I like heck, most of the time I don't read anything, right? I just install it and let's see what happens.
But nowadays, if I really want to, my Fedora Silverblue system can essentially get packages from any distro the way I have it set up.
You can do that through things like DistroBox.
That's the thing I have set up.
And really, once you have that, because you can install everything from Arch, then you pretty much are covered. Right?
Yeah. I have a Ubuntu container for DistroBox.
Yeah.
That's all I need for all the stuff that I cannot run in.
I've played with it a little bit. I think I've got DistroBox actually installed on this workstation here. And I installed some stuff from like the Debian repositories and the Ubuntu repositories just to see if that kind of stuff worked. And it did. It was neat. And then I started thinking, I'm on Arch. All of these packages I just installed from Debian are in the Arch repository anyway. Like there's nothing I'm going to find on Debian that I don't already have anyway. So I kind of deleted it, all those VMs.
There is a reason for it. If you want to have environments that aren't on your root file system, that's where that thing really.
Yeah, if you need certain versions of stuff, you'd have to.
And not just that, if you need to let's say, for example, support a specific distro, you can use that. Or even if, for example,
if you're developing software on a Debian system, that would make sense to. Yeah.
And
I used to use Arch Linux to have the newest kernel and just an LXC or something with all the distros in it, but with mixed results because systemd sometimes has trouble. And so, is it better this way?
This uses standard OCI containers, so it uses basically same type of containers Docker use.
Okay.
That's the Docker uses the standard OCI container.
Yeah, Sweaty Zombie in the chat says DistroBox. That sounds like a DT creation. No, that's not me. That's who created DistroBox? Was that the Red Hat guys?
No, they created Toolbox, which was
they created Podman, right?
Podman is basically a Docker alternative. Then they created Toolbox, which uses Podman. Then somebody created a like system called DistroBox, because one of the limitations of Toolbox was that it was really only Fedora only or Red Hat only tools. So, and there were some problems. There are some other problems with creating actual containers for it. So DistroBox solves all those problems. You can use just a standard Ubuntu container from your standard registry. So that's Docker Hub. you can just use Ubuntu latest and you're gonna get the latest LTS. While with Toolbox, you had to do some setup, create some files inside and some bullshit like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. All of that container technology confuses the hell out of me, probably because I just don't play with it. So that's I haven't played with it enough.
When you try to update in your vanilla OS video, you tried to update and you got all these sort of errors and things because they couldn't access the container and stuff. That's kind of weird, and it's not for your
vanilla OS. Yeah, it's taking the package from Debian. If you did an apt install, right? It takes the package from Debian and then it makes it a container. And that's just weird. That's just weird. Like,
I don't know how vanilla OS does it. I know that how Fedora Silverblue does it is really neat and really smart, but I have no idea.
Actually, the way Nix OS or Geeks OS, both Nix and Geeks, the way they do things, I think is very smart.
It's okay level. The problem with that, it doesn't actually obey by the same.
The file system hierarchy is a mess, right?
Can create compatibility problems.
Yeah. That's really the only downside to Nix and Geeks is the fact that file system hierarchy they use is so different than every other Linux system. It breaks so much stuff. You know?
And let's be clear, in my opinion, such the hierarchy we're using is actually bad. Like it's outdated and it should be replaced by something slightly more up to date in sense of for newer systems. And it's just like many other things with Linux that are still stuck
to be honest,
in the time of Unix.
If you could say that about pretty much everything about Linux, is if we would just blow it up and start all over, we'd do it all different.
Problem is that we don't need to blow it up and start over. We just need to start changing things. And the first thing
we have to change the core philosophy of Linux right now because of all the hate and everybody not accepting anyone and everyone living in their own bubble.
You're talking about the Unix philosophy? Is that what we've got to change?
Not the Unix.
That should be forgotten.
Well, I know Big Pod really hates the Unix philosophy.
Well, the cat's out of the bag on Linux. You almost have to start something from scratch at this point.
Not necessary.
You can't fix Linux, right? It's too far gone.
well, that's where you get these, specializations in distros. They try to correct it, but then you have like 20 of them, or you look at the map of the hereditary chart of Linux. That keeps expanding.
We need a big distro to take charge on this. So your Fedoras, your Ubuntu's, your Red Hats of the world, those distros need to change, not Nix OS and stuff, or Arch Linux, or really even Arch Linuxes of the world. But
I've come to the conclusion that the big corporate distros are not equipped to really lead the community, and the community is not ready to actually lead itself. So the community distros are never going to take charge in anything either because they can't agree on anything.
I have a crazy idea. What about the Linux Foundation? What about
the Linux Foundation? Is a joke. They can't.
They are. I'm going to be honest. They are too. Not to say they're not a joke. They're just too unfocused.
They're not really focused on the GNU /Linux operating system. They're focused on corporate interests.
Exactly.
It's not actually that. It's actually that their Linux Foundation is too focused on too many things. If you actually look at Linux Foundation, you're gonna see that Linux Foundation is all it is foundation that is built around creating Linux kernel.
The Linux kernel, and who really profits the most from the Linux kernel? What is the
big corporations?
Google. Google owns the Linux Foundation essentially because of Android and Chrome OS. I mean, the Linux Foundation exists to serve Google.
There is one step further. Does anybody even know how many foundations are made under the Linux Foundation?
Yes.
That's the problem. Each of those foundations should be its own thing, not part of Linux Foundation.
Have a look at the percentage of money getting spent on the kernel itself. And instead of standardizing the user land and helping developers, they are funding new projects doing things with Linux.
Well, in some ways, the Linux kernel, the reason it's does so much is because it is the kernel for so many different types of operating systems. It's not just GNU/Linux, right? It's also things like Chrome OS and Android and various other mobile operating systems, IoT devices.
Well, the problem too is that they
can you guys hear that beeping?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not me. I silenced my microphone.
That's, I think, Murray.
I'm going to mute Murray and see if that fixes it. Yeah. Murray, I had to mute you. There was some strange beeping feedback coming through your audio stream there.
Well, part of the problem is that the foundation raises so much money that you get to a certain point where they have to spend it or even more questions develop. So they have to spread the love.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you look under those foundations, what they have, I know of one. It's Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which is like a big thing right now. Of course, it's the foundation that has all the open source containerization.
I thought we were past that. I thought cloud was the buzzword 10 years ago. Now the buzzword is AI.
Yeah.
The catch is cloud isn't anymore a buzzword. It's a reality, not just a buzzword.
Yeah, Chat GPT in as a GNOME extension. Nice.
Oh, I saw the other day in a Emacs subreddit, somebody was, had a Chat GPT plugin working in Emacs. I was like, what are you guys doing?
Anybody use Chat GPT here?
I do.
No.
I actually do.
I refuse to register to it.
I used it once, but not anymore, simply because I have too many questions about copyright. So
yes,
that's the big problem about it.
I think it would be neat. I think it would be neat to have it script like a video for me. Just script a video, But then you're right, copyright issues. You never know what's going to happen with that stuff. The same thing with these blogs that are using it.
The problem is that there is no precedent in what happens, so that's why there is so many questions about copyright legality, and that's gonna get ironed out real quick when those images get onto the court.
We're gonna have court cases about it very soon, and then we'll figure out where to go from there. But
cases are getting first, so precedent.
I know. Josh will be using ChatGPT to compile Gentoo.
Oh my God! Say it one more time, and he'll show up. He's like, just.
So I would like to interject for a moment because I'm not actually using ChatGPT for compiling Gentoo, even though it gives a wonderful instruction to tell you to just refer to Gentoo handbook whenever I tell it to install Gentoo for me. However, what I do use ChatGPT for is actually in my D&D campaigns. I actually bounce world building ideas off of it, and it's actually a fantastic resource for that.
Well,
hey, Josh. Josh, turn up the volume on your mic.
Who now owns those ideas? Do you? Does OpenAI? Does actually someone who based on whose work model was created? And there's the problem of legality.
Well, the thing too is that I saw an article where I don't know if it was the ChatGPT, but the what they did is that they fed it into. It basically passed a medical examination for medical students. Like it was like almost there, and then I saw another article where it was talking about that it can represent you. It could be your attorney essentially, but they won't get. It's funny because I think they said that it wouldn't get fined or charged for not practicing law or something like that because it's not human. So there's some weird exemption or whatever. So that's
never passed the bar exam. Probably.
Am I a bit louder now?
You're good.
Yeah, I think law is too specific, but I mean medical practice is also too. But where does it stop?
Can you imagine how many people have asked it how to kill their whatever to get away with it?
Well, all I know is that it is its answers are also quite questionable whether you should trust them on first look, because I've made it lie so many times, and it's so funny.
Well, it's great. Like on a positive note, like for simple data manipulation tasks, for building a Python script, if you build up your thread within a GPT chat session and feed it the data you want and tell it exactly what you want and further improve on it, it does actually work quite good. But I do fully agree on you that this should not be used as a full replacement, but just as a tool. And I tried the Copilot of GitHub, which was supposed to be this is going to be your second brain, though I have to admit ChatGPT is actually better encoded. And I also, for instance, tried it. I had to study Latin for 6 years in education, and I fed ChatGPT like with context information of Latin translations into various other languages, and that works quite good. So I would have loved that as a student, as a secondary teacher that gives me context information on certain things I'm asking it for me to do. It's a good tool, but you have to use it as a tool and not as do me my homework.
Or do my homework. Hello, ChatGPT, do my homework.
No matter how much it's good, it's also still I still get hung up on the legality argument of it all, because it's fairly questionable who owns whatever comes out of it, because or whose data it was made. And
that's the weird part about ChatGPT. It's just like, I don't know if they've actually announced who actually produced the data set that they trained the AI off of.
OpenAI, that's everything.
Yeah, but where did they source the data from?
Yeah, but where did the data come from?
Collations of internet up until 2021. They curated the data set themselves. As far as I know, they just used the whole of internet.
Yeah,
and they curated down to a few sites.
But the problem is most of the stuff on the internet is not licensed.
Yeah,
and that is
if it's not
what can you do with that data? Because even if it's not licensed, it's not free for somebody to just do anything they want with that.
Actually, even if it is licensed, technically, unless it says that you can do something, you cannot do it, because copyright is still there. Even if a license is there, the person who made it or the company who they work for still owns the copyright. Even if you slap a license on it, that just tells you the person who owns the copyright, or the entity that owns the copyright, allows you to do this, and and specifically this allows you to do this, and this. And it is the same with open source licenses. Copyright. If I made something and put it on GitHub and slap MIT, yes, allow you to do everything with it. But copyright is still of my own ownership. That's the part that
can you imagine how the archives are worth right now?
Personal stuff, private stuff. Like
someone asked
information about friends of theirs. Where do they live? What's their phone number? And it had access to that data.
Well, there will certainly be laws against that kind of stuff. I can imagine, because especially here in the U.S., the courts do take privacy issues pretty seriously. So there will be limitations on what you can do with things like that. I imagine you can't just rip off social media stuff and then,
Actually, technically you can. If it's public, it's technically not anymore private information.
I thought like Facebook owned that information and Twitter on that.
Yes,
ChatGPT has access to Facebook. It can get information from Facebook. It can get information from Google.
Yeah.
So once your information is there, it has access to it, and it's not being submitted by the creators, it's there.
And all your government agencies are accessible through the coroner's office.
But the laws don't apply to the.
Well, it's not so much about access to the information; it's what you do with it. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's where it seems to be. Whenever I look at things that has to do with public information, that
like you said earlier, George, like ChatGPT is teaching teenagers because teenagers are curious. It's the curious age, as I call it. They ask it how to do this surgery, that surgery. How can I build this, build that? But even if you have the information to do it, you need the training. With the information, the information is not enough. You need the training
but they're getting that information from YouTubers. They're already doing that already.
and things are written on. How do you think that it got that information? How to do that? There must have been somewhere some written form of it. That's how it does things. That's why it's a language model. It basically takes information on a large scale and pseudo understands it when it doesn't. It just knows the context of it, where it belongs, on what question it should be asked or what keywords, and then when you ask it a question, it takes a question, pseudo understands it, and looks up what would be the closest thing and drops it to you. Or if you're actually going for something of a creative work, it starts just stringing words together that make sense to it based on the model it's using, and how much that data is unique. That's another question entirely, as we've seen with stuff like those image AIs that create images.
Yeah.
How much they copied stuff like Getty images. Even the watermark is there on some images, stuff like that.
We still have to settle some of those issues with the deep fake audio, images and videos, because some of that's going to have to be worked out in court.
Image AIs will have their own court real soon, and those will set a precedent for how entire field of AI will work in the future.
The same thing happened with Siri, for example, when it was created. A lot of questions were raised. Where is it getting the data and everything? And when I worked at Apple for Siri, I started to understand that all the data comes from the internet.
Yeah.
That we are the people who fall victim to providing all our information to the internet. Therefore, anything that's created to salvage that information from there, it's us who gave it the information. Nobody's stealing the information from us. No. It's there. We put it there.
It's all public.
It's all public. And we are the ones who put it there. We chose to make it public.
Dark Zero, when you worked at Apple, were the people that actually worked for Apple, were they as concerned about what the phone was doing as far as the data mining, or?
We were all
because you guys are more educated than the public. You think that the people that worked there probably feared their phones a lot more than.
You're asking a good question. That was.
If you can't say, I don't want to get you in trouble. But
no. It's a good question. The fact of the matter is, this was our discussion every time we went out to vape, to take a breather, whatever. That was our discussion. We were every day we were more surprised at the amount of data mining that Apple was doing while advertising itself as an entity that does not data mine.
Yeah,
so that was our discussion, and we were scared.
Apple was the good guy, right?
But we needed the money, so we were doing our job. And
they made a lot of money. Speaking of money, the reason I brought up AI as the new buzzword, because I've seen this a few times with these buzzwords that whole industries are built around, and they make billions or trillions of dollars. For those of you that want to profit on this whole AI thing, because I do think it's going to be big for the next few years, Microsoft, of course, is investing heavily in AI. Buy a few shares of Microsoft, Big Pod. I'm serious.
Yeah. For everybody watching, this podcast, this video is not a financial advice. Do it.
It's not financial advice, so if you lose your ass off, don't blame me. But I'm just saying, I would hold a few shares of Microsoft.
Just to end the topic on AI. I went and I asked ChatGPT what the definition of the word bald is. And it responded with this amazing explanation that if somebody shaves their head, which means that they cut off all the hair on their very scalp close to the skin, this is a common grooming choice for some people, for various reasons such as fashion, convenience, or cultural beliefs. And then I proceed to ask again, but are they bald? And they said someone shaves their head is not necessarily mean that they are bald. Baldness typically refers to the lack of hair growth on the scalp, either due to genetics, aging, or medical conditions.
Yeah.
So somebody put it through.
So last Tuesday, I went out to the dollar store and I bought this brand new comb. And Derek, I would like to send this to you for your hair.
That is a very large comb. For really any of us here. Well, I don't know. Stefan's got a pretty thick head of hair, but the rest of us,
Josh.
Why would we need a comb that big? Like,
okay, Josh.
I didn't even know they sold combs that big.
I know. But
yeah.
I need to apologize, and I would like to send this to you.
My hair hasn't seen a comb in quite a while because I'm afraid that it's gonna keep the hair.
You're going to grow it out even further?
Because they like to disappear over time. I don't want to give them to the comb myself.
As you age, they fall off and grow on your back.
Good morning, everyone. How's my audio?
Back.
I hear you, Murray. You're good.
I'm good.
My grandfather used to say if hair were important, they wouldn't grow on your butt. And
yeah,
he was kind of right about it.
Murray, how you doing? Now that we've got your audio.
I did it last month, thanks to Patreon. We're at the mercy of computer algorithms now. My credit card updated, and they wouldn't let me update it on their system. They have a form for it, put it in, didn't work. So I had to cancel my subscription, wait 2 weeks for them to process it, and reapply, recreate the account. So
And Patreon is a bit of a mess when it comes to like your credit cards expire or things like that. Sometimes it doesn't process your payment, but it doesn't. I guess some people don't get the notification because I'll have people 6 months later say, "Oh, I didn't realize I hadn't been subscribed to you for the last 6 months." Patreon, nobody ever let me know, and it's like,
Yeah, it happened to me as well.
So it's a good thing you don't update the credits very often then.
Yeah.
No, because if I tried to update the credits, there would be a lot of people that did need to be on there that aren't, because Patreon doesn't keep an accurate count, because so many people are behind on their. Not everybody gets processed the same day. That's why I only typically update it about once a month.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people that have paid may not even be on the spreadsheet that I download from Patreon. So to avoid any of that, I just once a month I'll update it.
So Derek, I've got
home or not.
Specific question for you about tiling window managers and splitting the screen.
Yes, sir.
Can you programmatically split a screen, or do you have to do it through the keyboard?
You can do it through a program.
Well, I mean, you can write your own layouts, through whatever language these window managers. Like, I can create any layout I can imagine in Xmonad or Awesome or Qtile. You're in Qtile, Murray?
Yeah, that for one. Yeah. But I was just generally because I saw a demo of somebody was using YAD in the terminal, and it came up with the floating dialog box as usual. But then he did something else, and it split the screen and put YAD in the right-hand screen in the entire window. So at the top you had your data entry, and the bottom you had your OK and cancel, and it was occupying it was embedded in that right screen. So then he somehow did it programmatically, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you're describing there, but yeah, I mean, you can have layouts and window rules for practically anything you can imagine.
Oh, okay.
But if you got a video of it, what you could do, I know Qtile, they've got an excellent IRC channel. They've got an excellent subreddit as well on Reddit, and you can get feedback pretty quickly on how that guy accomplished that, and they probably tell you exactly what he did.
Okay. Some other things.
Mm-hmm. There may be even a module, like a Python library somebody wrote specifically for that. It may not even be something that guy necessarily.
You could just create a virtual monitor within Xorg.
How about tmux? There's a client server with tmux. Is that relevant or not?
tmux only operates in a terminal environment.
Exactly, it does. But as far as scripting, you can control the behavior of certain tmux splits with scripts. For instance, I do when I SSH to certain servers, I SSH often to. I do have a default tmux config with my editor and a file tree and a console all pre-configured in a tmux because I need those tools anyway. So it's kind of handy, but you have to configure it, and it feels kind of old school as well. I don't know.
Makes you feel like a hacker, right?
Yeah, it does. It does get you using tmux is pretty much the hacker man style. I don't know.
When everybody else is having to switch to a different TTY, you're just using tmux.
Yeah.
I haven't used tmux in so long, or screen for that matter.
No, screen is actually quite good if you need to use a lot of consoles and text-based stuff. If you get into it.
I normally use a single one, and if I need more, I just open another session.
I've installed GNU Screen and I've installed tmux before, and they're nice programs, but because I'm never in a TTY and on my actual desktop, I've got a tiling window manager. So I don't really need them.
Well, the advantage that I found to like using tmux, and this is coming purely from the perspective of me using Gentoo, is that occasionally, you can sit there, you can run Portage and tell it to update your system, and it will actually crash the terminal sometimes because of how verbose the output is. Because I never called a quiet flag because obviously when we're running Portage, we want to see that compiler port. But anyways, it can actually output text so fast sometimes that will actually crash most terminals, including Alacrity. So what you do is...
Seriously?
Yes. So instead, what you do is you just run merge within tmux or screen.
That is... The fact that can happen is insane.
Yeah.
I know that certain terminal emulators lagged, but they actually stopped running and crashed. That's a news to me.
Well, you see, this is specifically on a system that I have that has 256 virtual CPU cores that I can use. So it kind of makes sense at that point. It's just like, it's a little ridiculous.
What kind of a system you have?
It's an AMD EPYC server.
So that would be with 256 threads. That would be what?
That would be compile Gentoo.
That would be dual 64 core system.
Yeah.
Dual socket 64 cores. Oh, where do you get that sort of insanity?
Go to a certain automotive manufacturer that I think that I work for. Go to their homepage and it's that server.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just quickly in the chat, some people were confused about tmux and screen. What are these programs? They're terminal multiplexers. What they do is any terminal, whether it be a terminal emulator that you've got on Xorg or Wayland, or the TTY, if you don't have a graphical environment, it will split the screen up into panes. Or splits, or whatever you want to think about it. It's like Vim splits or Emacs splits, right? It just divides the screen so you can have two different terminals side by side, essentially. Instead of typically how you have to do the TTY is if you want two terminals going at the same time, you have to switch between TTYs. Well, tmux allows you to have 2 or 3 or however many you want open on one screen at the same time.
And you can plug back into them, which is especially handy for SSH connections.
Yeah. It essentially turns your TTY almost into like a tiling window manager, right? It's essentially kind of...
Yeah. And speaking of window managers, yesterday on the discussion on one of the podcasts, as I was talking to the developer of Hyperland, the thing that bugs me the most about window managers is that they are the beginnings of a DE, they're an incomplete DE. So if you want to use them, if you want to have a settings GUI, you have to choose between KDE settings GUI or XFCE settings GUI or GNOME settings GUI. Same goes for file managers. Same goes for half the things. So it starts becoming a little bit confusing. What is best to pair it with? Should I pair it with Thunar and XFCE?
Whatever you want. That's kind of the point.
Manager, or
the point is to build your own desktop environment however you want. That's why. Yeah,
and
that's
most,
why
most of the people don't complete it. Most of the people, they just use a settings thing and a file manager. The rest, they keep plain and simple as a terminal running most of the time.
Well, most people, you just give them GNOME and they're happy, right? That's,
I have no
standalone window managers are for people that actually want to build their own desktop environment. It's not for.
But it's confusing. It's an open door. Basically, it's an open door to start mixing languages. Like you have a mix of Qt, GNOME, GTK, and other languages. Just to it's confusing. I'm trying to get into Hyperland because it's super interesting with the animation.
Oh yeah. But I can tell you right now, creating a window manager on Xorg is like 1,000 times easier than trying to create one using Wayland, because Wayland you really have to write a compositor.
Wayland, you're not creating.
That's right.
First of all, let's first of all talk about our terminology. When we're talking about Xorg, yes, we're talking about window managers. There is no window managers on Wayland.
That's correct.
There is no such thing. They are compositors.
Compositors, and that's the problem. And that's a much more complicated thing to accomplish.
Compositors are far more complex, far more insane thing than window managers ever were on.
That's why all the Wayland compositors right now that exist are all essentially forks of the same one. They're all, aren't they all WL roots or whatever that what's the compositor?
They're either all WL roots or come out of Western, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's for the floating ones. I forgot about that. Yeah, what's a Wayfire? Is it that? Which one is that?
Another one, yeah. You have three base ones: WL roots, Wayfire, and Western, depending on.
And they're all essentially forks of each other, is because there's so much code involved in making the compositor. You can't write one yourself. Somebody's already wrote the 100,000 lines of code to make this thing happen somewhere else. Let me just take yours and I'll tweak it a little bit.
I think the most unique ones are the Matter and whatever the compiler.
You're talking about the one for Plasma? Yeah.
Yeah. Those two are probably the most unique. All others are either Western, Wayfire, or WL roots.
Wayland really screwed up, with this whole the window manager as the compositor thing, because we would have had a lot more desktop environments and window managers already be Wayland compatible had they not designed it to be that way, because it really prevents.
I know that it's been a problem for us getting things running on
Mate?
Yeah, Mate on Wayland. And there is other issues beyond just compositor getting compositor, because you can get some other compositor work. For example, what's that? There is another one by GNOME that also works. Okay, you can get that one to work and all that, but there is so many issues, so many stuff that is just pain in the pain.
Yeah, it's really going to prevent Wayland adoption, or it's already, but it's one of those things. Wayland's been under development for like 13, 14 years, and it's not really ready yet. And I still think even when the display server itself kind of has all of its issues ironed out, the fact that so many people are tied to their desktop environments and window managers that they like, and some of those are not going to be Wayland compatible. You're going to have people on Xorg 20 years from now.
The problem is, and I'm going to say it right now, that we need to not forget that for how long Xorg was in development. And
it started in the mid 80s.
Essentially the same point. So they're trying to get 30 years of development, or how many? 40 years of development.
40 years now, yeah.
Into what is essentially a single single protocol, and they made a mistake by actually going for the protocol. They should have just gone for an API, server client style, and that would be it. No, they went for a protocol because Xorg was a protocol.
Yeah, it's like we said before. If you could just blow it up and start all over, I think the Wayland guys, had they known now what they didn't know back then, they probably would have made some different choices.
Well, if it wasn't under the group it is, this probably make a difference as well. So, it is what it is.
I just think they're making against me. They're for me to.
No, your audio is cutting out really bad. Yep, Dad, we didn't hear most of that. Sounds like there's a short or something in the mic.
Probably the cat likes to chew on it.
That's gonna be what it is. The cat killed it.
The cat killed it.
The cat killed it. I can switch here just a second. We can switch.
As somebody that's had a lot of cats, yeah.
Well, there's a reason.
You said the cat chewed on it. Yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah, the wires especially. They love chewing on wires.
Yeah. I've got another question here. Has anyone successfully used configure, make, install recently? Because it's not working for me. I tried to compile Python.
On what distro?
Pardon?
On what distro?
On Debian Bullseye and Monjero.
What distro? What? It all make works no matter what. It's the problem is that how everything around it is written. So it is probably specific to that package you were trying to use.
Second. It's configure that's giving me the problem. It's Python 3.11, Python 3.10, and Redis, and it's occurring on Debian Bullseye, and it's occurring on Monjero.
Isn't the message Python 3.11 and Bullseye backports? Why are we trying to compile it?
Yeah.
Pardon?
I think Python 3.11's in backports, so there's no reason to compile it.
There is a reason to compile it because you can customize it. You can add in TK stuff and SQLite stuff and optimizations on it. The thing is, it's giving me a message with awk. It says unexpected new line or ending of string. It's generating an intermediate file and then giving me this awk error on all of them. I was just wondering if anybody's...
it could be a different version of awk that it's expecting. I don't know if it's using standard GNU awk or...
I tried aliasing gawk and mawk and plain awk, and it's the same thing on it. I was just wondering, it's still working for you guys, so...
I haven't just configured.
I haven't compiled anything really recently. I could. I mean, heck, I've got a bunch of suckless software on my system. I could run a quick...
Yeah, it's not the kind of message that... You Google it, it's not the kind of message that's out there to be done. Anyway.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. I switched to my webcam mic. I was curious to see. I use Kubuntu, and I can't believe I am a KDE fanboy now. But Kubuntu's rock solid. I don't need to mess with it. I don't need to mess with window managers. I don't need to tweak stuff. But I'm using the 5.19 kernel, and I'm considering I'm going to be upgrading my machine here when my tax comes in, and I'm considering going to MX Linux AHS because it uses the 6.0 kernel, and they also have a KDE version. Is this shooting myself in the foot, or is it a good thing?
It depends on your device, I'd say. I updated and I broke my Ethernet drivers, and I almost cried, and it was a pain in the neck, and but probably.
Hey Murray, I forgot the suckless tools don't do a configure; they just do a make install. But make install works on those, at least on Arco.
Yeah, it's the configure that's giving me the trouble. Anyway, that's okay.
Hippie Daddy, welcome to the club, to the KDE club. Come to Daddy.
Yeah, I'm KDE as well, right? Yeah. I came across the PS1 environment variable, one of the that lets you have the return code from the previous command show up on your screen there.
Mm-hmm.
You put in what was it? Left $, left present echo / $question mark right parenthesis, and you can see the return code from the previous command come in there. And that's proven quite useful to me because you write bash functions and you get the return code in other people's programs. So just thought I'd throw that out there for somebody.
Yeah. And for those that are using other interactive shells other than bash, ZSH and fish, they've got fancy plugins to get all kinds of information in the prompt, including code, exit codes, error messages, things like that. The time it took for the command to actually execute, which people often are amazed that my fish prompt gives me the time of a command to execute it. It serves no purpose for me. I don't even know why I have it in the prompt, but it's just something visually it's nice.
You're just reliving the IRC days, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, sometimes you'll run a really lengthy command that takes several seconds. I guess sometimes it's nice to have the time on that, but most of the time the commands you run are like milliseconds. So there's no point in
for those kind of commands, there's no point. But when you're compiling a kernel, you would like to see how long it took to compile the kernel.
This is a lot of seconds.
I came across Roel Vanderpoel twice. His videos on how to monitor processes on there. You know the famous Roel.
I sort of...
Yeah, of course. I know him. He actually was a patron of mine after I made that video.
I miss the days of compiling a kernel when I used to have to do it with Red Hat 3, and you'd have to set it up for all your hardware to work, and you go through and set your settings and compile and do the make install, make clean, and all that stuff. And it's
then maybe
actually interesting.
Then maybe we should talk with Josh. He does that a lot.
Yeah,
he does the make installs. Yeah, you do that a lot on Gentoo. Those of us that use a rational Linux distribution, for sane, mentally adjusted people, we don't do a lot of configure, make install. That's not what.
Guess what, guys? Budgie 10.7 is out.
Great.
Oh, I know what I'm doing the rest of the day.
I won't budge to install it.
You won't budge to install Budgie.
I'm about to say, I know what I'm spending my Sunday afternoon doing now.
It just got released, and finally they did a little good stuff. So I was reading about it just now. It's like it showed up on my feed. I was like,
is this going to be
Budgie still alive?
Yeah, Budgie.
Have you thought about swapping out your GNOME edition of Zero to a Budgie edition?
No.
Not on the radar yet?
By the way, Josh was useful yesterday on my podcast. He suggested a name for the Hyperland edition of Zero Linux, Hyper Zero.
No, not Hyper Zero. It's Hype Zero. Get it right. Because we're all hype on Hyperland, so it's got to be called Hype
No,
Zero.
not Hype. Hyper.
Yeah, but yeah. But if it's Hype Zero, then he's hyping nothing.
I mean, everybody's all excited about Hyperland right now, so it's just like, why not just call it Hype Zero, just to play on it?
Yeah, okay.
But Budgie adoption is actually increasing across the distros.
Yeah, and that's because Budgie has actually disconnected itself from Solus, and it's actually ran by an independent foundation now. And that independent foundation is actually pushing to package Budgie for distros actually directly, rather than relying on the community to do it for them. I think right now they're still packaging for Solus. They have a copper repo for Fedora that I think is still targeting Rawhide. It's not available on stable yet. And then I think they hired the Debian maintainer for the Budgie desktop. So they hired him directly. And then there's another distro. I can't rember right now.
Ubuntu has its own flavor.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, your audio is still a little low. It's kind of like I don't know if Hip Dad's cat also chewed on the cords over at your place.
He's got his own cat.
Right.
There, I bumped myself another 10%.
Yeah, it just sounds like you're really low, almost like in an echo chamber. It's really.
It's an Ohio thing.
It must be.
I was just gonna say, like, wild Ohio cats nourishing on copper cables.
Yeah, there was some talk of there being a Fedora spin, or at least it made available in the stable repos for Fedora 38. And then I've been playing with Nobara, which is it's interesting because they have an interesting take on it's like a weird combo between GNOME and Budgie.
I couldn't get it to work. It completely hosed my system.
Yeah, I'm looking at doing it as an alternative to straight Fedora because it doesn't work with my new AM5 system very well with the NVIDIA card that I had in there. I didn't have as much of a problem with my laptop that had integrated graphics and installing the NVIDIA driver, but it was not a pleasant experience. So.
Oh, it sounded like somebody stepped on a wire there. Yeah, I don't know what to deal with. It seems like all of a sudden, like audio is a problem for everybody, except for Stefan.
Murray started it. It was all Murray's fault. He started it.
It's contagious, right? It just infects the whole group.
Yeah, well, good. I'm overseas. Stay away with your audio virus there.
Audio virus.
That's okay. It could be a latency issue.
Dark Zero, I did want to broach a subject here about, we talked earlier about interesting distributions like Vanilla OS and this new Blend OS. Yeah. There seems to be a little controversy with Blend OS. I'm not sure what that's about. Can you tell us what the community is, I guess, they've got their panties in a twist about here.
There was a video put out earlier in the week by Nicolo from KDE, who talked a lot about the controversy. The controversy is surrounding credit and not showing the proper credit and where it needs to be. There's a lot of Blend OS, the Blend backend that allows you to install deb packages, DNF packages, and Arch packages, is a fork of a fork. The main one was the original one was, I think, created by the developers of Crystal OS, Crystal Linux.
Okay.
But and I'm not don't get me wrong. I'm not dissing the kid. He's just 13 years old. But when you open a document, a project, and replace all mentions of the original creators with your name and call it accidental, I don't think that's accidental. But when he got called out for it, he apologized, and he only ended up adding one sentence saying that the original project was by X person. And the controversy also surrounds other projects in Blend OS that were used in Blend OS. So basically, what is Blend OS? He took everything from different places, put them in one place, and called it Blend OS. He didn't do much. It was just the configuration. And he chose to use Arch as a base and add the immutable part on top. The immutable part on top is where the hard work is. He did a lot of hard work into adding the immutable part to Arch.
Yeah, because that's interesting, being a rolling distribution and then trying to be immutable.
He's like, he wanted to create a project that is based on a rolling release, and that's the last, the tagline is, that's the last distro you're ever going to install because it targets distro hoppers. So you are getting everything from every distro in one distro.
Right.
So, but nothing comes out without controversy. Even Zero Linux came with the controversy saying that I'm nothing but a fork of Arcolin.
Well, I mean, this is the thing.
In the beginning, In the beginning,
but that's the point. That's the point of free software is you can fork things. So people that complain about people forking things, yeah. Now the licensing issues, like typically these things, most of the time are accidental, especially with young people. Like I said, this kid is like 12, 13 years old. There's just open issues like, hey, you violating a license here. You needed to keep this attribution as part of the code of this file. They'll add it back typically. I mean, these things typically don't need to be like a big public fight. That I can understand why because adults typically act crazy.
No,
but there's no reason to act that way to a kid. Just explain to him, hey, you did this wrong, buddy.
Yeah,
here's how you do it.
So I'm
Right.
People lose sight of that.
Why are you dissing the kid? He took things and he put them in. It's like every single distro out there does. Like we take things from different places, we configure them our way on the base that we prefer. We prefer, but the guy who
typically what we do in this community is
Ubuntu Unity. So.
Typically what we do in this community is we like to take people that are really young and really smart, and we like to piss them off in such a way they start developing software for Windows and Mac, and they just leave free and open source software behind forever because they can't stand this community. Because I've seen that happen many times, where people just throw their hands up and it's like, I'm done. I can't work with these guys anymore.
Well, there was a recent example of that. I forget who was covering.
There's a lot of examples of that.
But there was a more recent one. I can't remember. It was about an emulator.
Oh, you talking about Termite? Because I know that terminal emulator project. Yeah, the guy quit. But his problem was not necessarily the entire open source community. He was just tired of dealing with Red Hat.
No. It was regarding I think a retro gaming emulator.
Oh. Okay.
And the guy was like, screw this. I'm tired of all the threats and all the other things. It's like,
and we had another famous example was the creator of Pulse Audio and System D, Lennart Pottering. He got so mad of everybody trashing his work. But he was kind of a jackass, and he brought a lot of it on himself because he would troll people too. But he got so flustered, he finally quit and went to work for Apple or something. I don't know. He's doing
Microsoft.
Is he working for Microsoft now? Okay.
Yeah. Well, he's still developing and maintaining Pulse Audio as well as System D. He's actually just being paid by Microsoft to do it now.
No, yeah. That's all different, but he's doing it still.
Well, I mean, it's at such a critical mass now that he can't not develop it, or else he's in a crisis.
Yeah, well, companies are going to pay him to maintain it because it's such an important project.
Yeah. So he wanted.
It's kind of like Linus working on the kernel. Google is going to pay him any amount of money that he needs to maintain that thing because Google can't let the kernel die. Right? And it's like, hey, you're the one that's supposed to run this thing. What do you need?
Pretty much.
Here's a check, a blank check. Yeah. Let's see. Dark Zero's line is too loud. His sound is clipping too much. I hadn't noticed that, but
no, it's my keyboard. Whenever I type on my keyboard, because my microphone is not a good microphone. It just hits up and down, up and down, up and down. But to finalize the thing, it's just he is getting the hate that a lot of hate and stuff like that, and he doesn't deserve it. He's doing a good job, but he needs to pay attention at the licenses and do what each project requires you to do. Like some projects require you to put links to their website or put links to their name, stuff like that. So,
Ooh,
that's Murray.
Murray's starting stuff again.
Let me mute Murray. Murray, you got some issues with audio feedback again.
So he just needs to pay attention, and he's good. I like the idea he's behind. I like Arch. I'm an Arch person. So if I were to use an immutable distro, I would choose BlendOS over Debian-based other Debian-based ones.
No, for such a young kid, he's got the right ideas on the perfect operating system. It needs to be an Arch-based, immutable. It needs to run the Unity desktop environment. I'm with him. It checks all the boxes.
Well, he's not using Unity. He's using Node.
No. Oh, he was so close.
Yeah. And the only thing I don't like about his way of doing things is the containerized boxes that he uses. But otherwise,
that's what all of them are. That's what Vanilla OS is doing. Yeah, containerizing everything that you
it's more complex. It's no longer for the beginner user. Although he advertises it as for the beginner user, it's not for beginner users.
No, of course not. Oh, neither is Vanilla OS, because if I can choose packages from a variety of different Linux distribution repositories, like that's not for a normal desktop computer user. Like, why would they want something like that? Why would they care if it came from the Debian repo or the Arch repo, whatever they're installing? And what's the difference? They'd have no idea what the difference. They wouldn't know that they're different versions of the same software.
Yeah, exactly. So it's for the advanced. The correct way to advertise these kind of distros is for the advanced user who doesn't want to distro hop anymore.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to step away for a second. I'm going to go take a tinkle. Hip Dad, you're in charge. All right.
Okay.
We're free reign, boys.
Now that I'm in charge, we're going to change things around here. We're going to make everything KDE, no Arch, just Ubuntu only, so Big Pod's happy. So, that's how we're going to do it.
Unfortunately, as an OpenMan driver user, I have to protest.
Unfortunately, as Fedora user, I have to protest.
I used to use Mandrake and SUSE. Still, I always go back to Debian base.
Well, anyways, guys, I'm coming to you from the future of KDE Plasma. I'm on 5.28 today, and I can tell you that it is working flawlessly.
Good.
Pipewire currently is not.
Well, that's the other thing I don't understand is why do they take you've got Pulse, you've got Pipewire, cut the chains, don't have both of them on the system. If you're going to use Pipewire, eliminate anything Pulse on your OS and just use Pipewire. If you're going to use Pulse, it should work. They should make it work.
That's the problem. Problem is technically there is no Pulse audio on your system in most cases. But there is a shim between Pulse audio API and Pipewire. The reason is most applications don't understand Pipewire API. So they need to have some sort of connection. That's why Pipewire has two shims, a Pulse audio shim and a jack shim.
I know where they can put the shims.
Those shims, most systems use those shims. They don't use Pulse audio. If you have Pipewire active, you can delete Pulse audio, and it will still work because the shim takes over what normally would be Pulse audio's job. That shim translates to what Pipewire needs to have. That's why all the Pulse audio commands still technically work in most cases.
Okay, then I'm gonna go to audio,
but because there is Pipewire that pretends to be Pulse audio.
Or I'll go extreme and I'll go back to OSS. Okay, gee.
Wow, that's
who cares? Do what you want. That's why Linux is a thing.
The wonderful thing about Gentoo is that you can still install OSS if you want.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. You just say just put an OSS in your make.conf.
Well, Gentoo's all about pain, so that makes sense.
OSS was always a pain. I loved it also when it came out, and it worked pretty good and had its little defects, but Pulse Audio was fairly painless for me. So I don't understand the Pipewire thing, but
Pipewire is better. it does.
Yeah, the ALSA days weren't bad. I did like the little mixing tool they had, the terminal application, the ALSA mixer. Very, very intuitive. It's kind of like Pavu control in the terminal. Right?
Yeah, you could do your pitch, you could do your length, you could do. I mean, you could do some awesome stuff. I used to make very strange sound effects when I was doing internet radio through a Real Media Player, and we had a radio station called Fake Radio, and I used to do some pretty cool effects. And I miss
You can do those effects on Pulse and Pipewire as well.
With Easy Effects.
I don't know what it's called. I don't use
There's pulse effects, but it does add certainly some delay to the audio pipe.
Yeah, pulse effects I've played with a little bit. It's kind of flaky. I'm not a fan.
So you can.
I think they have one that's called Easy Effects now. I think I have it installed, but I haven't messed with it.
That's the Pipewire one.
Yeah.
One thing where Pipewire beats Pulse and everything else is Bluetooth audio.
It is definitely an improvement.
But Bluetooth audio is an abomination itself because everything gets squeezed down to 128 kilobytes a second data rate.
I can't get my Bluetooth to work, so it doesn't matter.
Bluetooth audio is a problem because of the latency issues.
Yeah, it's not that bad when you actually listen to it. I have 2 pairs of Bluetooth headphones I use. I don't use anything else anymore, and honestly, most of the time I don't see any difference in whether I plug them in wired or wireless, because
in the chat
pair I had before actually has a cable I can do, and it's if I actually go and measure it, there is less than, I don't know how much difference. So it's essentially meaningless because most operating systems actually go and adjust audio delays on their own. So once you connect Bluetooth headphones.
In the chat, Arch Penguin was asking, does anybody actually like Jack? I have used Jack. I don't like it. Jack is more complicated. I've made videos. I've actually made several videos over the years where I'll start the Jack server and, record, whatever. And it works. It's just, it's a pain.
If you have a purpose-built audio workstation, Jack is amazing. It's when you use Jack on your desktop and you have to realize that you have to balance both Jack and Pulse audio because you cannot have both.
I know someone who uses Jack exclusively on his desktop.
Well, I do use both, but I built my own audio server with the Juice framework, so I can add some gate and compression and stuff to it. That does work quite well, but it's complicated.
Super fancy with it. Apparently, you can use Docker to run a Jack server. That way.
The problem is when you have a lot of audio inputs and outputs, having to do all the patch bay work in Jack is a pain because you're constantly having to connect and disconnect, different sources depending on what you're doing. And it's a lot of work involved where most people, they just want things to just magically work. I don't want to fool with it. I just want it to work. And Pulse Audio,
wire plumber.
Yeah, Pulse Audio is a lot easier. And that is, as much as I hate Pulse Audio.
Well, I'm an enthusiast, so I want this to be tight. And I spend a lot of time in video calls, so I guess it was worth
I spend a lot of time in video calls as well. That's like probably as much, if not more than you. And I honestly, nowadays can't go without wireless headphones.
Well, yeah, I need wireless headphones as well, but I use the proper microphone.
Yeah.
Especially if you chat with people who are on cheap laptop screamers.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah. And OBS, for those wondering, OBS works fine with Jack.
Yeah.
You can make videos. It's not a problem.
I think when they were testing the Linux builds, they actually built the Jack implementation before they built the Pulse Audio implementation.
Probably. Yeah, because they probably figured most people, especially professionals, right, probably were going to default to the Jack server. Now, one thing I did want, we were talking about some of these Wayland compositors earlier. and because I never try to run Wayland on my physical equipment, is it still an issue with applications like Jitsi? Because Jitsi being an Electron app, is it still?
Well, good question, DT. Because as I was talking to the Hyperland developer, he was like, "There's a certain flag you have to add for Electron."
I know things don't work on Wayland properly.
They do if you give them the right flag to launch. Since he's developing Wayland, he has been developing Wayland-based stuff for the past 12 months. You add the right flags while launching the Electron apps, which they should do themselves, but unfortunately, not all of them do.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I knew there were some hacks for it, but if it's not,
you have to add a flag, and then they will run just fine. But
that needs to be automatic. You can't ask the user. You can't ask the user to do that.
You can't expect regular users to do that. But yeah, it's only.
And to be fair,
the Hyperland wiki is amazing.
To be fair, Wayland not Wayland. Electron is an issue on Xorg as well. At least it is on the BSDs. Don't most of those BSD operating systems have issues with Electron? Yeah, you're on, Big Pod. I saw you testing the mic.
Yeah. I was having problems. I couldn't hear Dark Zero at all. Everybody else I could hear. I couldn't hear Dark Zero.
Did you mute him?
No, he was speaking, so we got him.
there was no problem with me not hearing him. That wasn't that bad.
Okay.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. Yeah.
And I know, Electron gets a lot of hate, but even the people that hate on Electron, I know so many of you guys out there use Discord. You use VS Code. You use things like Jitsi. Spotify is an Electron app, right? It's kind of important that these things work.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to have potentially millions of Linux users that will complain if these things are broken.
And also, you just reminded me. You know how Electron apps like Discord, you want to capture a window, capture a screen, whatever on Wayland, it's problematic, right? That's why the Hyperland developer created his own XTG desktop portals to bypass. He fixed the issue that Wayland refuses to fix.
Yes.
Well, he's probably doing it in a different way than.
Yeah, he's doing it. He compiled his own XTG desktop portal.
But they're never going to merge those.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because probably.
It's nice he did that, but they're never going to merge his commits to the main branch.
If it bypasses any kind of security, that will never fly, and honestly, shouldn't. Their mandate is security. So
we talked about Red Hat earlier with the terminal guy, the termite guy. It's the same thing. Anything that the Red Hat guys have their hands in, they're really bad about accepting outside commits.
Yep.
What about the current Rust being forced down our throats too?
You talking about in the kernel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, by forced. You're going to have Rust installed on your system anyway. I mean, it's hard not to have Rust.
I'm old. I get grumpy about everything. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I get it, but because people complain about like my Xmonad stuff, like, I don't have Haskell installed on my computer, which I get. Most people probably don't have a Haskell program already on their computer, but like Rust. You can't be running a modern computer and not have Rust probably already on the system.
Even if you don't have Rust installed, Rust doesn't work like that. Rust is statically compiled all the time.
What's the reason for using Rust in the kernel all of a sudden? I don't understand it.
It's not
to get more people to commit to the kernel.
It was for a long time coming. There are multiple reasons. First of all, C is really hard to do.
That's the reason.
Memory safety and all that. So basically, a lot of people don't do good C code.
Only neckbeards, only really old neckbeards program in C is the problem, and they need the new young developers.
I mean, that was a cited reason as well.
Yeah,
it really is. That's the reason, Big Pod, is C developers are dying, and they need the new breed of developers.
Reality is C is problematic to code since it has zero memory safety, and you need to have really, really, really good C developers to actually get any kind of safe code out of it. So it's not the problem that people don't code in C. Problem is
I've got to read this comment in the chat. Hey guys, this comment, Sweaty Zombie says, Stefan's beard adds quality to the sound of his mic. That's what it is.
My looks are a constant source of entertainment in the chat, and since I'm not taking myself too seriously, I hope
that beard is an audio filter, right? That's what it is.
Probably it cuts the pop. I don't know.
Now back to Rust.
Yeah,
back to Rust.
And well, Rust by the very default implements memory safety, so that's why it is a preferred language, and it's basically runs on the level of C and has all the good memory safety features that are important for something like kernel development, really anything development. And if I personally, I don't like Rust, I don't like C, but if I had to write something on that kind of a level, I would definitely choose Rust over C, because I would be far more confident I'm going to write a memory safe code and not cause stack overflows and such problems.
But we all know what you would write your kernel in, what language you would choose, Big Bud.
C#.
Go ahead and say it.
Yeah, C#. I was going to say C#.
No, it's not. While technically you could, it's not a good language for a kernel.
So is Rust open source? Is it full open source, or is it proprietary?
It's
Rust
full
is
open
open
source.
source.
Okay.
Rust has different problems.
It is open source.
Rust
Made by
is
Mozilla originally.
It was Mozilla, yeah.
Yeah, Mozilla.
Now
But
by
it's its own
Rust
group
Foundation.
MIT and Apache too. It's dual licensed.
Yeah.
Rust has some issues, and you find this out the hard way if you do all the platforms and stuff like that. It takes a long time to do anything with Rust, especially to compile Rust itself. And this is not a problem for people having big machines, but this is for people with embedded machines. It's a problem. And the static linking doesn't help. I really miss incremental linking.
I can confirm it takes a Pinebook Pro about 7.5 hours to compile Rust.
Yeah, but that's a very underpowered machine.
Equally cored, equally.
That's exactly what he's arguing. Machine. It is underpowered.
And second of all, how long does it take a 4-core machine to compile GCC?
Quite a while.
Oh, days.
Let's be clear. An equally powerful machine will take
GCC,
just as long to compile.
GCC is also a bad example because GCC has been rewritten in C++, and build time went through the roof, and size went through the roof.
It wasn't any better when it was written in C. Let's be clear.
Yeah, but the trick is the standard can be much smaller, you know.
Yeah.
I'm doing experiments with TCC or PCC and stuff like that, and they are not so bad actually. It's still C, yes. I think people have just an aversion against C for some reason, because it's not only memory you have to manage in an operating system. You have to manage disks and I/O and resources. You have to give them back. You have semaphores, and Rust is not helping you there too much, in my opinion. Because
it is.
And who writes an operating system? Get real. It's a few people.
Oh, yeah. It's the neckbeards.
I completely agree that you have to open Rust for people like driver developers for an LED, bling bling something, or so that you can add modules in a certain language into the kernel. But you could also argue for Python for the same reason.
No, you couldn't.
Yeah.
I looked at some benchmarks for that. Am I in okay now?
Yeah, you're good, Murray.
Oh, good. I looked at some benchmarks comparing Rust to just about everything. There's a site that does about 40 benchmarks, and it's always the fastest on that.
Yeah.
The only thing close to it was Go. It's in the same ballpark.
Which website are you using?
Pardon?
Which website are you checking out?
I don't have it in front of me, but if you Google it, there's one that does Python versus Rust, Go versus Rust. Kotlin versus Rust, Swift versus Rust, everything versus Rust, and a lot of them they wouldn't finish. Rust would do it in 45 milliseconds, and then the other ones they wouldn't finish on it. So Rust is really fast, but it's not an expressive language like
that's
the
resulting code. That's the code generator generates really good code. And Rust is as fast as C. That's not the point. The point is for the time for the developer till he gets his binary.
Right.
And that's not
Who
run
cares
time.
what time is you? Honestly,
the developers, the developers care.
I am a developer. I actually work with more languages than probably you use or most of you use on even a monthly basis. I probably
Andreas is my
right
legal
now,
representative.
There is enough compute in the cloud. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, whoever, DigitalOcean, whoever you want, pay them those $15 and you can have a machine that rips ads of any of your home systems. That's honestly the strategy most good developers actually use.
Well, no one's ever going to agree on anything. It's one of those things. We had a standard for decades. You programmed everything in C, and if you wanted scripting, you just did it with Awk or Perl, and that was kind of where everything was. And now you've got so many of these languages.
Then somebody threw Java in there, and it just screwed everything up. So we'll just blame.
No. Everybody now agrees Java's terrible.
Java is terrible.
Yeah.
We all know that.
It still pays.
Yeah,
it still pays. You can still learn a check, right? Yeah.
I wish you didn't. There's a reason I had to learn Java.
Java.
When school they still like if you go to college, as a computer science, they still teach kids Java for some strange reason, even though they could really teach them more appropriate languages.
If they want to teach object-oriented languages, they could at least go for something a bit normal and not just C#. C# is one of the options. There are other options that are just as good.
Honestly, Java does actually make some sense.
I'm live streaming.
It teaches you so many different paradigms of programming. It teaches you library implementation.
I'm gonna be a while.
What's the Hello World? How many different libraries does Hello World touch in Java? It touches like 7 or 8 of them, doesn't it?
Yeah. So if you wanna go different styles of programming, the best language for that honestly is C#. It has everything from functional inside to it's an object-oriented language, but it has
Lisp
from functional.
No, we don't need C#. We need Lisp. You just described Lisp right there.
QBasic.
I've been learning.
QBasic.
I've been learning some Lisp, and it's not very often that you get to teach a programming language how to do something.
There are 2 reasons why Java made it where Lisp didn't. Java is a lot closer to C. Simple as that. That's the real situation. Java is closer to C, just like JavaScript is closer to C, and every big language that you see takes stuff from C.
Do you think that Java wouldn't have been a bigger mark on the programming if it wasn't part of Solaris?
Probably, possibly, but I think the big thing for it was the idea to compile once, crash everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when Oracle took over, it got a big push too. So
yeah, it got a push to even more crash everywhere.
Yeah,
I've had a major breakthrough with Python recently. The problem with Python is packaging. How do you deliver and package desktop applications? And they still haven't worked that out. And I've finally succeeded in being able to do it with app images now.
Pip install.
It took a long time, but 6 weeks ago I took another stab at it and got it working.
Flatpaks, app images, all the options you have to deliver.
Just publish the
Python
source
apps.
code. And just like tell a distribution, hey, I would like this package for your distro. Can one of you package it for me? And then somebody will write a Gentoo e-build for it because that's what happens anyway.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you can ask distributions to package your stuff, but you're not guaranteed that somebody's going to take the time. Depending on how complicated it is, some people may not want to take on that responsibility. If it's something simple, yeah.
Honestly, somebody's going to write a package build for it for Arch Linux, and then if it picks up a large enough user base, that might inspire somebody from another distribution to package it.
And you've got a lot of scripts out there that'll take one package format and just automatically convert it to another. That's usually
there is a code now for snaps to app image, flatpak to app image. There's one called Make Portable, which is a script which takes a binary. I just tried that one last night. It seems to work. It uses strace on the binary. You say, give it so many seconds to do the strace. And I just used it a little bit last night. That seems to work okay. So there's lots of ways to get your app image. I now have 1,180 app images created through Nix. On it. And
that's crazy.
And 40,
most of them don't work if you don't have Nix installed.
That are great on it. So
yeah, now that you mentioned that, Big Pod, I've been playing a lot with the Arch to app image script that converts Arch packages to app images, and they work fine on any Arch-based system. But you're not running them on Debian stable.
Yeah, but that's fine too, because if you're in an Arch environment to begin with, you're doing it to get away from the update problem of things crashing on the update. So it serves its purpose, even if you're not going to use it on Debian. On it, yeah, it's perfectly good.
One
there was
on a different topic.
Yeah.
Rockets. I have a bone to pick with you. Why do you like Haskell?
Oh, it's a great programming.
That's what happened.
You need to embrace functional programming, Big Bud.
Last week, or this week, currently, that will end in about a couple of hours, I had to write a program in Haskell.
I knew where you were going. You finally had to do something with it, and it's so weird. I know. The first time I looked at it, it's strange.
Had to write a web API in Haskell. Let's just say that then I went and in the same time wrote the exact same API in both PHP and Dart. In the exact same amount of time it took me to figure out how to write it in Haskell. And I already knew what I need to do in Haskell in the big scheme of things.
The great thing about Haskell, though,
I completely forgot, and Dart I never even seen.
The great thing about Haskell is you can do some really amazing stuff in very few lines of code with Haskell. Like, it's really terse compared to a lot of other programming languages.
Honestly,
if you know what you're doing. Obviously, if you don't know Haskell, then it's weird.
Would you call it read-only? Like Bash is essentially read-only. Once you've written it, it's not very legible on it. How about Haskell?
It depends on how complicated some of the functions you're writing are. I will say some of it is like complete gobbledygook when you go and try to read somebody else's stuff.
All of it is gobbledygook.
It's not as bad as something like Perl. I find Perl really strange. Like, if I didn't write it, I can't read somebody else's Perl script.
I have a Perl script that somehow mysteriously works, and nobody can explain to me how it works.
Nobody can explain the code. That happens. That happens a lot with Perl.
It's the only language in which you cannot. Apparently there is a mathematical proof that Perl is the only language in which you need to run the code to figure out what it's doing.
Yeah, Haskell's weird because it's kind of like, if you have a cooking analogy, you're gonna bake a cake. And most programming languages, you give them the recipe. Do this step, this step, this step. Haskell, it's like, what do you want to end with? I want to end with a cake. And I don't care how you get to it. Just make me a cake. There you go. That's the code.
That's not a good language.
It's really fascinating, Big Bud. You got to admit, you enjoyed playing with it a little bit, even though it was hard.
No, I definitely didn't enjoy it. I was like, why?
Wait till you start hacking on Xmonad, Big Pod. Pandoc is also written in Haskell. You're going to love looking at the Pandoc source code. It'll give you a lot of good information.
I was so happy the moment I finished the project.
I tried Elixir, which is another functional language. And the thing I missed most from that was there was no early return statement. In Python, you can go, if at the front you can screen things out. You have to go all through the function top to bottom, and you have only one exit point in Elixir. I found that hard to work with on it. But and the other thing is it tends to be slow. If you're trying to make a minor change to a large vector of some kind, you have to recreate the whole vector on it. So it has its limitations as well on it. So I ended up abandoning it, mostly because you can't package it very well. It has limitations on you can create a binary, but it has OpenSSL vulnerabilities and things like that still in the kernel, particular kernels as well. So I left Elixir for that reason. But if I were 22 again and looking for something to program in professionally, I'd be all over Elixir, because the company's going to have to worry about how to package it. You don't on it, and it's fun to work with. It's really a good language to work with.
In today's age, I came after using Haskell, I came to the realization that the language I had before hated, which is Golang, because it's weird as hell.
It is weird too. Yeah, it is.
I came to the conclusion that Golang is completely normal.
All you need to know, Big Pod, is in Haskell, all those dollar signs everywhere, they're just parentheses.
In Haskell,
just know that
is a monad, and nobody knows what a monad is. So, what the hell?
Well, the problem is when people have to, if you're going to explain to somebody what a monad is, you have to explain like 15 other things before, you know.
You need to be an expert.
That's why you can't get a one-sentence answer, right? Right.
So, advanced mathematics.
So you got
Haskell on steroids, basically.
You got Haskell as a reference to Leave It to Beaver, Eddie Haskell, and you got Monad as a reference to Dune the movie. So yeah, okay.
Well, the concept of Monad actually predates Doom.
It does.
It does.
And the Haskell language was named after a famous mathematician.
A monad is a mathematical concept that was actually theorized back in the 1600s.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, in the movie Dune, they did that phrase. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, guys, let's all take a minute and give a last word here, since we've got about 12 minutes or so, and we got 10 of us on camera today. We normally have people drop out by now, but you guys stuck around the whole 2 hours, pretty much. Everybody that's here, you guys been here from the beginning.
I was late because I woke up just in time to decide.
Well, you were a little late, just a little. Dark Zero, give us a last word.
Hyperland is the future.
Not really.
And it's going to be a zero Linux spin?
No. Maybe, but not by me.
Maybe.
We are open to... we are now open to community editions. Whoever is willing, we are willing to welcome you to the family.
Xmonad.
Okay.
Embrace the Haskell.
If you're willing to help, we'll create one.
Hey,
yeah, but I'm going to write everything in Haskell.
Better be careful, because I have DTOS packaged for Gentoo.
Oh boy! Oh boy!
It's also I think it's packaged on Nix. There's somebody that's been packaging a lot of my stuff for Nix. I don't know who. I appreciate it though.
Well, other than that, on the serious note, thank you again, GT, for another awesome community cast, and. Yeah, who knows what the future holds for any distro, let alone Zero Linux. But yeah, I've been very busy lately getting to know other YouTubers, fellow YouTubers, doing collabs everywhere I can, appearing wherever I can, because it's fun. It's the fun part of Linux. It's
fun chatting with the community.
Yeah, the community. There are some good people out there. You just need to find them.
Yeah. most of them are good. There's, over the 5.5 years or so I've been doing this YouTube channel, I've probably corresponded with a couple of hundred different like Linuxy and tech related YouTubers, and in all honesty, there's been like 2 that were complete a-holes. Yeah. And the rest were all good people. Just normal people. You can, there were 2 that they're not very big on YouTube either, which you can imagine being, those kinds of people typically nobody wants to be around anyway. Nobody wants to watch their videos. But
it was Gates and Balmer.
What?
It was Gates and Balmer.
Yeah. No. Bill Gates is not even in Steve Ballmer's league. Steve Ballmer was a much bigger a-hole than Bill Gates ever was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I appreciate you, Dark Zero, for hanging out with us. Big Dad, or Hip Dad, not Big Dad. You had a big gulp.
And Hip Dad?
Well, he had a big gulp cup, and I was like, give us a last word.
Last word is the more you mess with it, the more it's going to screw up.
True. I'd agree with
that. Very true. Very true.
What do you mean?
You got to know when to stop.
No.
Yeah, you got to know when to stop.
It's my GNU given right. I will not stop.
Okay.
That audio is so bad, Josh, right now. All right, appreciate that. Andreas, give us the last word.
We didn't touch that one, but I was astonished about people complaining. You make a retro OS or Linux video, and people were complaining about missing 32-bit.
I knew it was going to happen. I'll be honest, because I know the community. I knew people would complain about there not being a 32-bit ISO, but I thought it would just be a few. But there were like 50 comments. Oh, I can't use it because it doesn't support 32-bit. It's like, my goodness. Your machines have to be at least 15 years old to be 32-bit, if not 20 years old. There's not that many of those machines out there. There's no way all of these people complaining actually need a 32-bit ISO.
Little Raspberry Pis and single board computers are actually 32-bit only.
Yeah,
sure. But it's not an ARM ISO. It's an x86 ISO, though.
And even most of those are nowadays 64-bit. So
yeah, most of the modern ones are, but there are still some 32-bit devices that are actually still produced. Now, like on your x86 system, you probably don't want to be using legacy OS if it's super old anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, but I was a little surprised. I knew I would get some of those comments, but I was surprised at the amount of them. Anything else, Andres?
Nope.
All right. Well, appreciate you hanging out with us this morning. Erjan, I don't know if he's there. He's muted right now.
He wrote in chat that he has no microphone.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Well, thanks for sitting in the chat with us, though. Stefan, I know you've got something good to share with us.
Well, certainly. With the start of the new year, I started to follow the B-side of the GNU philosophy, which is, despite being relatively well educated, we tend to have extreme opinions. So I had a look into F#, since we talked about functional programming, and I have to admit I quite liked it. And besides that, I had to touch a lot of new technology and stuff that is coming around, ranging from JavaScript front end to F#. And my spirit for this month is to just stay curious and stop gatekeeping and just be nice to each other. And thanks for the chat, guys.
Yeah, cool. And one thing I've noticed in like the Haskell community, a lot of people that play with Haskell also play with F# a lot, and same thing with the F# community. So don't be surprised if you get into Haskell with Big Pod. And
just a good reminder for everybody: F# is made by Microsoft.
It is.
So
it's the one good thing they did.
There are quite a few good things.
To finally patch up the lacking features of C#, somebody's got to do the thinking part. I have to see that too.
George, let's get a last word from George if he's there.
I am here. Thanks again for having us for a chat, and it's been fun. And I look forward to the next one.
I appreciate that, George. Big Pod, you got any rocket news or anything you want to share with us?
Really, but I do have an advertisement for everybody. So today I'm going to be taking the role of Dark Zero. So in about half an hour, you can join me on my YouTube channel and join me on my stream where I'll be demystifying Kubernetes spots and Linux namespaces. So many of you may love this talk because it is all about Linux kernel feature called namespaces.
Kubernetes. Now that's a sexy topic right there, Big Bud.
It is more a vehicle to talk about Linux namespaces.
It's a little longer than a half hour, isn't it? Didn't you say 3 p.m. Eastern time?
I moved it to in half an hour because something came on horizon. I have to be there for that.
Okay.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us, Big Bud. And Murray, your last word, sir.
Yeah, I'm back into Python now, so I discovered a nice IDE called Wing. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it.
That's one I haven't heard of. Wing IDE.
It's just for Python. It's like IntelliJ. It has an enterprise and a public domain version, and it's exceptional. It's much better than IntelliJ. It's more intuitive. It comes batteries included. I didn't need any plugins to use it. You do single stepping and breakpoints and everything else. It's less picky than IntelliJ in terms of what it considers a Python binary. It won't use an app image as a Python binary, for instance, on it, and it has better handling of external commands. Like you can write bash functions. You can have a lint program to edit the currently selected file. So it's a lot better. The enterprise version is $299. If you do public domain work and you have a website where you're sharing code with the public, you can get the production version for free. So Derek could get production and probably other people as well. So it's a really good IDE to work with Python on it.
Yeah, it looks like there's a 30-day free trial for everybody regardless. So if you wanted to try it for a month.
That's the enterprise version. The other version is free. There's a free version as well on it. Yep. It's very good. I like it a lot better than IntelliJ. May have more features, but it's more awkward to use. It's not as intuitive. The other thing is, it looks like Ubuntu is dropping ZFS on it. They apparently haven't done any work since April. They're thinking of dropping it on the current version, and it looks like it's on its way. It looks like a failed project.
Well, Ubuntu was the only one really trying to get ZFS and Linux, and then
Proxmox uses first class support for ZFS. Proxmox has, or not? Proxmox uses ZFS.
TrueNAS Scale
actually has a Debian build.
Yeah,
TrueNAS.
TrueNAS Scale.
Yeah, the
and Open Indiana,
a repository for several different distributions for OpenZFS.
Yeah, Open Indiana, but that's obviously
like there is a big.
That's not Linux; it's Solaris based. Right?
We should remember that there is a big difference between Linux and BSD when it comes to ZFS. On BSD, there is a lot more about ZFS, where on Linux it has a lot less penetration.
And last thing is, a good sci-fi movie is The 13th Floor. It has something called dialogue and a plot and some nice special effects as well on it. So, yeah,
I'll check that out.
Yeah.
The 13th Floor. Yeah. All right, appreciate that, Mert.
Okay.
Josh, give us the last word.
Let's see here. I intentionally blew up Gen 2 this time. It wasn't accidental, and it wasn't ever anybody else's fault except my own. So I installed Open Mandriva, which honestly, like, it's a distribution that I honestly think that more people should use. It's actually pretty cool. There's absolutely nothing unique about it other than it's KDE only.
No. Well, That's it? No Emacs news for us?
Well, you see, there was no Emacs news this week, but GCC, we're getting version 13 here in the realm of eventually. So obviously with GCC, we're going to get a new version of Emacs because they seem to those release times seem to align a little bit.
A lot of the good news stuff, that tends to come out about the same time. Yeah. All right, well, appreciate you hanging out, and of course.
Also, everybody, let's give well wishes to Old Tech Bloke. I don't know if you guys discussed that earlier, but he's no longer going to be posting to YouTube due to health concerns.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was a couple days ago.
Yeah,
Old Tech Bloke OTB. He had a community post. Yeah, he's sick and he's not going to be posting videos anymore. You can go check that post out on his channel on his community tab, and wish him well. And for me, my last word, of course, is thanking you guys for hanging out with me on camera. We had some folks that were here earlier that jumped off. Of course, you guys in the YouTube chat were great as well. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'm going to thank the patrons that couldn't be here as well. I'm going to show some names on the screen here as we go.
Before you show the names,
Too late. I started showing the names, dog, but go ahead.
Sorry, because I just remembered. Earlier in January 7th, one of the maintainers on the AUR of the NVIDIA drivers and 200 other packages on the AUR passed away. Jonathan.
Yeah.
He passed away due to a battle with cancer at the age of 40. That makes me rethink my age.
Yeah, you and me both. All right, well, thanks for sharing that. And I'm going to go back to sharing these names here on our way out here. I want to thank each and every one of these folks. You're seeing their names on the screen. Thank you guys. And other than that, let's all wave bye to YouTube.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
JavaScript.